and welcome back to another video. My name is Michaela and this is Michaela's Crafts. Today's video is going to be all about how to make this granny square blanket. I know that a lot of people came to my channel whenever I made this granny square blanket, and so it is just time that I tell you guys how I made it. I have to preface this video by saying that this was not something that just popped into my noggin. I saw a picture of it on Pinterest. I'll post a picture here, an inspiration picture, and I just loosely followed what I think the blanket would look like. I'm really happy with the results, and I'm like a firm believer that if you see any granny square blanket anywhere, you can in fact replicate it, because you can easily just count the rows, count the stitches, and you don't have to do gauge or anything like that because it's just a blanket and you can just create. You can make your blanket so very customizable, and I really want this tutorial to reflect that. So you by no means have to follow my row count, my granny square count, the order that I do it in, any of those things. You by all means should do whatever your heart desires, and use this as a guide to make your blanket look however you want it to look. And that's precisely the reason why I ended up with two different looking blankets. So the first thing I want to talk about are the colors that I use for each blanket. And so the first blanket is the one that I made for my grandma, and the main color I used Karen 1 Cream. The contrast colors I used 8. So I used Karen 1 Faded Brick, Karen 1 Aqua, Karen 1 Soft Sage, Lion Brand Mocha, Lion Brand Cherry, Lion Brand Claret, Red Heart Light Sage, and Red Heart Medium Thyme. The second version of my blanket, I used the main color Chocolate Brown by Big Twist. I used Karen 1 Cream as a contrast color, Karen 1 Faded Brick, Aqua, Soft Sage, Ocean, Midnight Blue, and Big Twist Mustard for my contrast colors. For this blanket, I used at least 1 pound of the main color, and I used less than 1 pound for the contrast colors, but I think it's worth it to buy the 1 pound because it's much more economical that way, and that way you make sure you have enough for the blanket, and then you will have some left over. But you can also buy smaller skeins of the contrast colors if you want, and then that way you can regulate how much you have left over. It's completely up to you. So my two blankets do vary slightly, and I will talk about that once we get into the steps and they kind of branch off into being different. The materials that I use are a 6mm hook, a darning needle, scissors, and of course the yarn. And the skills that you will need to make this blanket, there's not a lot and it's super easy, are magic ring, double crochet, slip stitch, and your favorite sewing method. Or you could even slip stitch the granny squares together if you don't want to sew them like I did. So now we're just gonna get into how I made the granny square blankets. So the first step is going to be to make 9 or 12 granny square blankets with the final row ending in the main color. So your first row is like whatever color you want, second, third, fourth row, whatever color you want. The fifth row of your granny square should be your main color. And you will make 9 granny squares if you want a square blanket and 12 granny squares if you want a rectangle blanket. And that's the two differences that I did in my cream blanket versus my brown blanket. I will put a link to an old video that I made on how to make a granny square and how to change the color, but I think I also have some footage, so I'm just gonna insert it and you guys can watch it. That way this is all in one place if you prefer, and I will see you when we're done making that granny square. Okay guys, I'm trying out my new like hands-free camera holder or phone holder. I'm super excited about it, but also I can show you guys how to make a granny square. And I actually have a video on how to do this, but I thought like in case there's any absolute beginners watching this and they really want to see like in this video how to make a granny square, I'm gonna show you. So the first thing you're gonna do is start out with a magic ring. So I always take my working yarn in my backhand, wrap it around my 2 fingers, and then put it in the back over here. And then I just take my crochet hook and pull it through. And then I just let my fingers out of the circle, keep my working yarn in the back, and it should look like this before you chain 4, 3, and 4. Then you're going to do 1 double crochet into the circle, another double crochet into your magic circle. So in case you're an absolute beginner watching and you don't know what a double crochet is, you wrap it around your hook, you insert it into the magic circle, you yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So now I have 3 double crochets. I'm going to chain 1, do 3 more double crochets. And then I'm going to chain 1. Do 1 more cluster of double crochets, so 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. Also, when you're going in the circle, make sure you're going underneath both of these pieces of yarn, and you'll see that at the end when you go to pull it tight, that's because you crocheted over it, okay? So you chain 1 and you double crochet 2. And that's because this first chain 3 is going to be our last cluster. So you should have 1 cluster, 2 cluster, 3 clusters, 4 clusters, including that first chain 3, and you're going to pull it tight, and you're going to cut it off. Sorry, let me grab my scissors. Oops. And you're going to pull this up and pull it through. And that's your first round. So for round 2, you're going to grab your second color, and I always just hold my second color behind my piece. Oops. And then I just insert my hook into one of these chain 1 spaces here, and I just pull it through, and then that counts as my chain 1. So I pull it through, then chain, and basically you just locked that color in there, and you're going to chain 4. So this is 2, 3, and 4. Then you're going to do a cluster of 3 double crochets. And then I'm going to do 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet in this next space. So I just like to tuck this color under here. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, 1, 2, 3, and then the same thing, 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. And one more time, 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. Now on this last piece here, you're just going to do 2 double crochet and then connect it to your last chain 3, which will count as a double crochet for the end of the round. So 2 double crochet, and then go ahead and slip stitch that. Grab my scissors and pull it through. So now that's 2 rounds, and we're gonna do 5 rounds total. So it's gonna be 4 rounds of your secondary colors, and then the final round is going to be your main color. My main color is this brown, so all of mine, the final round ends in brown, but we'll keep going together. I'm going to do a dark blue. Okay, so same thing. I just hold my yarn in the back, insert it in one of these corner spaces, pull it through, chain 1, 2, 3, 4, and then do 3 double crochet. Sorry, let me get some of this yarn out here. And then 3 double crochet in this space. Then we're not going to do chain 1, 3 more double crochet because we only do that on the corner. So here's a corner, here's a corner. So it's just 3 double crochet, and then on this one we do 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. Yep, so here we'll just do a chain 3, 2, 3, and then 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. Three double crochet here. And then 2 double crochet here, and then slip stitch it to that chain 3. And we are going to cut this color off. And boom, round 3 is done. My next color is going to be this orange. So, because right now it looks like a little snowflake, but same thing.
Perfect. And there's your granny square.
So your second step is going to be to sew them together using your favorite sewing method. I don't have any footage of this, so I guess technically these won't all be in one place, but I will leave a link to a video that shows the sewing technique that I use to put all my granny squares together, because I am just not very good at showing people how to do things. I can just kind of tell you what I did and give you the tools that you need by linking the videos so that you can learn for yourself. The third step is starting and ending with your main color. Do the granny stitch as many rows as you want. For my cream blanket, I did 13 rows, and for my brown blanket, I did 11 rows. I didn't start and finish my granny stitch rows with the main color, but I did start to do it toward the end, and I think it just shows the main color so much more when you do it that way. So for example, here I just started with gold and then, or mustard, and came to brown. But here I did brown and then came to brown again, and I think it just emphasizes your main color. So even though I didn't do that in either of my blankets 100% of the time, it's just what I would recommend and what I would do if I made another blanket moving forward. On a side note, after I sewed my first 9 granny squares together on my cream blanket, I tried to do a couple rows of different stitches, and I don't even remember exactly what it is that I did. I did it to try to emulate something in the inspiration picture, but for simplicity's sake, I would say just go ahead and start with the granny stitch rows and do granny stitch the entire time. If you don't know how to do granny stitch rows, it's basically a continuation of doing a granny square. So once all of your squares are together, just think of it as one large granny square or granny rectangle, and you will do clusters of double crochet, 3 double crochets in each space. I think I have some footage, and if I do, I'm gonna just stop talking and insert it here. And if I don't, I'm just going to post another link to a video that will show you how to do granny stitch. I will probably put a link there anyway, just because somebody else will probably explain it way better than me. So the next step is I started making granny squares with 4 rows, the final row ending in the main color. And that's basically what you should think of every time you do granny squares, like always gonna end with your main color. And I started to calculate how many I would need to put it around the border after all of these granny stitches here. So for my cream blanket, I made 38, and for this blanket, I made 34. This time around, the granny squares are only gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. And on this main piece that you have, see, none of these ones are attached. You should have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 rows of granny stitch. And that means you'll have 28 going along the short side, 28 stitches, and 34 going along the long side. Now, for our little granny square here, it's gonna be a 4 by 4 stitch granny square. That means on the side with 28, 7 granny squares are gonna fit along beautifully. And then I put 2 on the corner here. But on this side with 34, that is not divisible by 4. So we're gonna have, I still squeezed in 8 because I'd rather it like stretch more like a blanket than be like too tight, like and cinched. So yeah, 34, and you're gonna make all of those. I blocked mine, and then now we're gonna sew them to the granny square blanket. I found that it's going to be really difficult for your granny stitch rows to end and be divisible by the exact number that you need, especially if like you're doing a rectangle. Like it's gonna be really hard to get both of your rows to be divisible by 4, for example, or 5. So you just kind of have to round, and that's basically what I did. And you just kind of like see how you can squeeze in your granny squares, and you just make it work. So after that, you just sew those around the border again, and you kind of like rinse and repeat this for your smaller granny squares and then your minis, but I'm still going to talk you through it just a little bit. I did the granny stitch rows for 12 rows on the cream blanket and then 8 rows on this blanket. So at this point, you should be to here on the blanket. And this is where my granny square blankets really start to differ, because on my granny's granny square blanket, I started adding the mini squares. And so the mini squares are just 2 round granny squares, the second round always ending in the main color. They're super small and super cute, and I really wanted to add them to this one, but I just got too tired of making this blanket. So I made 101, yes, 101 mini granny squares to put on the edge of my granny's blanket. And then after that, I did 2 rows of the cream color, and then I did a scalloped edge to finish off that blanket. For the brown blanket, I did 48 squares of 3 row granny squares ending in your main color. Secured them around the border, and then I did 8 more rows of granny stitch, starting and ending with my main color being brown. Originally, like I said, I wanted to add minis, I wanted to do a scalloped edge, but this blanket just, it just took too long. It was just taking way too long. I actually only made this blanket for you guys so that I could document some of the process. I hope I have enough footage to enter in this video, and it kind of feels like it wasn't really a tutorial at the end because it's just me telling you the steps that I took to make the blanket. But I think if you sat and watched like a long video of me showing you how to make it step by step, that it would just get really boring anyway. And I think that once you start making granny squares and doing the stitches, you're just gonna wanna customize it anyway. You're gonna be like, I don't care what she said, I know how to make it. And you'll just start making a bunch of granny square blankets. So that is it. That is it for this video. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that it lived up to exactly what you wanted to see out of, how to make this blanket. If you still have questions or you still have something that you need me to come on here and elaborate, please just write it in the comments below, and I will be so happy to answer them for you. And until next time, I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you next week.